Canosiper is the false cypress group because it had no companion. But once they found the one in Vietnam, now there are 2 genuses, so they got their own name. The western red cedar is a tuya. And so one is Xanthosiperis, which is yellow cypress, that's what it stands for in Latin. The other one is a tuya. But they are wonderful plants. And then zone 3. This is an area where you're free to plant whatever you want and whatever matches whatever is going on around the yard. However, if it's only lawn that's going around the yard, talk to that person. They have a problem. They are addicted to something that they don't need to be. Limit lawns. You can always have less lawns than you think you can. You need less for playing ball and less for having fun than you think you need. It's sort of like we have to wean our society off lawns. Put meadows in there. Meadows are great. They are wildflower mixes and grass mixes that will grow well in your area, wherever you are. Each area has their own. They can be mowed if you want to. Mow them once a month or once every quarter with a push mower. But they don't need to be mowed. If you don't mow it, it will still look great. And it will be good habitat. And if you have kids, think of it when you were a kid. Would you rather run on a lawn or walk through things that are big and you have to move them? What do we prefer as kids? Because that's what your kids and the client kids will want too. This is where you mixing, the zone 3 is where you're mixing that rain garden back with what's there. It's a freshly planted rain garden, don't be fooled. Those purple flowers are asters, and they will not only grow together, they can take over zone 3. Their limitation will be the wetness. They don't like wet feet. So they will probably grow into the lawn, but they will not take over your rain garden. We have some grass options. Grasses in some places will behave better than in other places. We have lots of different genuses in the grass group. This is one of those groups that can become very invasive if this is ornamental. So make sure that you talked to a horticulturist and you know that the grasses you're recommending are okay to use in your area. But they look good. And they look really good if you didn't prune the heck out of them comes this time of the year. I'm pretty sure that you all can recall public landscape sites where you're driving by right now, and it was a grass in the summer, and now it's just little stubs. Because somebody thinking it has to be maintained, cut the whole thing off. And this is what's lost. Leaves and seed heads that move in the winter wind and gives you a three-dimensional effect. And it also protects the soil from erosion underneath it because the leaves capture that rain and don't allow it hitting the ground. They look fabulous and they come in all kinds of colors and you can mix them very well. The switchgrass here, and it's mixed with, let me see them right here. Look at this, really beautiful colors. And so then you can have dwarf conifers. They come in smaller sizes than the ones growing in the forest. There are some hybridized versions nowadays, so they can fit an urban landscape. Sun roses will grow very well in this area too. They are really hardy. They are evergreen. They're called Helianthemum. And then you also see the wallflower, the Aricinum, right behind them. Colorful plants. Around the Puget Sound, Helianthemum, the sun roses are great but not the best. And the reason for it is that the flower only opens when the sun is out. And in the Puget Sound, we have a tendency to be more shady even in July than not. So they're not as colorful over there. But here they would be wonderful. Beach strawberry. Not only that it's a aggressive grower, and it can grow out here too, even though you don't have a beach area. But if you have area that's sandy, it will love it. It will think it's on the beach. And it will take over. It's very happy. Easy to pull, doesn't have deep roots, but you will pull a lot. Because carrot trees used to grow in our forest understory out here too, and we lost them when we were logging and taking forests down and building our cities. They are an important wildlife habitat food. They are fairly small. They usually stay under 20 feet. Now, when you think about that, that's still a good tree to provide you with some canopy around buildings, but it's not going to take over that building. I'm pretty sure you've seen trees planted really close to the building that will want to be 100 foot tall. This guy will not want to do that. It's a well-behaved tree. It gives you good fall color too. This is a fun thing. High bush cranberry. Really tart, just like a cranberry. So around the daycare, they probably eat one berry. They will never want the other. And you don't have to tell them that you can actually use this cranberry as cranberry. It's a totally different plant. Cranberry is vaccinium, this is a viburnum. But you can make cranberry sauce out of this, and you don't need a peat bog to grow them. In fact, they're gonna be dry. They look really good. The leaves look really good, the flower looks really good, and they have a fall color that's really good. Look at those leaves. They look a lot like the maple tree. They look a lot like the nine bark. They look a lot like that flowering red currant, all of our favorites. They all have a maple-like leaf. So even if that's your favorite look, if you planted a flowering red currant, a nine bark, a high bush cranberry, and a vine maple all in one rain garden, it looks like you just have the same plant everywhere. So make sure that you have variety. Design principles, we listed that. It's the same for everything. You have to have your focal points, you have to have your balance, you have to have your mass, you have to have your pattern, you have to have texture, you have to have color. This all goes together. We really want to make sure you don't use the same looking thing for every solution. Hardy fuchsia is not a native plant, but if you interview a hummingbird, I bet they will say that it is. They love it. It's not invasive. And it's beautiful. And it's actually, if a kid munches on it, flower and berry are both edible. It's not going to kill them. So it's good around kids or dogs. Here is the flowering red currant. Blooms really early. Beautiful. Again, it's a personal favorite. There is the white variety that flowers white. We have so many white flowers that I'd rather not use that. And the white is not going to be a hummingbird magnet, the red will. This is the fall color, just like the high bush cranberry. Look at that. This is what we were talking about. It might as well be the same plant when you look at the leaves. Now this is a hummingbird condominium, otherwise called Mahonia aquifolium or tall Oregon gray. Why they love it so much is because the leaves are pokey, so predators will leave them alone. The branching pattern is really solid, so they can build their tiny little nest and lay their itty-bitty eggs in there. Flowers will give them early nectar sources, and the berries will attract insects that they can hunt for, because hummingbirds are actually vicious predators. And the leaves form little cups that collect water when it rains, so they can drink. Because of all of these attributes, and because it's an evergreen, and because it has really strong and aggressive, deep-growing roots that are willing to break apart then, this plant is excellent in not only rain garden setting, but also on slope restorations, and it can take cold and sun and shade, and will help with erosion. Mock orange. It's a plant that perfume companies use for the fragrance, and it's a native around here. It's beautiful, flowering, and very fragrant plant around May and June. After that it's green, then it drops its leaves and it doesn't look much. You don't want to have this as a focal point. I recommend a flowering red currant versus this as a focal point. But it's a good background. There are a lot of hybrids because this guy will want to be 6 to 8 feet tall and wide. There are a lot of hybrids that will give you much smaller stature for urban development. But not all of them are fragrant. You always want to check. Some will come with variegated foliage and even gold foliage, so it gives you a little bit more interest, but the winter, they still just wigs. Ocean spray is a very limited habitat plant, but if you design for the West Coast, you'll find this. Important habitat plant. Very important food and nesting source for later parts of the year. Only, however, if you leave the seed heads on, which are not the best for an aesthetic value. It's a great background plant. Do not use it as a focal point. It tolerates salt like crazy. So actually, in some places where you have air conditioning systems and water purifying systems and pool systems that drain some salty water into the soil, this guy and the wax myrtle, the Myrica California, will put up with a lot of salt in the soil. It will absolutely tolerate it and look good. But everything else will die. Again, mountain hemlocks, alpine trees like subalpine fir. Wonderful plants. If you have a sloped site where you cannot put a rain garden in, you have bluffs nearby or otherwise infiltration can cause some slides and problems, use trees. These will like that space. They want dry, they will grow deep roots, they can take our winter conditions. Plant these instead. Plant colorful foliage. This is the Pinus contorta Chief Joseph, this yellow guy here. It will only turn gold, however, when it's cold. I don't recommend you spending $300 on a 5-gallon plant in the summer because you might be getting just the Pinus contorta that's not a Chief Joseph and it will never turn gold color. Always buy this in cold weather, but it's beautiful. You also see the Pacific Fire Wine Maple here. That has red bark. These are again West Coast, anywhere from South British Columbia to North California. It's the Arbutus Menziesii, the madrona trees, that are so important to our ecosystem, and we are losing them in large numbers because they do not tolerate development. But they especially sensitive to is summer irrigation. They need to dry out in the summer. So, if you can, plant little seedlings in your zone 3. They actually will stay fairly narrow, get tall, they curve around to find the light. They are okay in urban environments if they grew into it. They are really hard to transplant. Usually you plant 100 and get about 5 of them survive over the years. That's another reason why we're losing them. But it's well worth the try. Strawberry trees that you see on the other side, it's the Arbutus unido, are close relatives. They transplant easily. You can bring those in too. And the squirrel population will be forever great. Noble fir and blue spruce. We use these all the time. And in dry conditions, they love it. In this climate, excellent trees. And so now we are at the installation part, which is very important for you to understand. We have to put woody mulch down because it buffers your weight when you're walking around in the rain garden. It protects the soil from erosion, keeps the moisture in during the dry season, keeps the temperature warmer in the winter month, keeps it cooler in the summer month, and it breaks down into organic humus in the soil. So it actually, as it breaks down, it feeds the soil. So woody mulch is very important. But not all woody mulch are the same. Bark, beauty bark, is not considered woody mulch. It's bark. It's grown on the trees to repel water. It's also slow to break down. And it floats in a rain garden. You want shredded wood that will absorb the water. It will give you some first flushes after dry seasons. If you have a heavy rain, you will have a little bit of particle floating, but the whole mulch layer will actually sink and stay on the bottom. That's what you want, because we're creating a forest floor. We are not beautifying a landscape yard. We are mimicking the duff layer. We are going to get into the installation. So take a break. Maybe a few minutes, okay.
So we're shifting to the workshop then, or
Yeah.
because we're running out of sunlight for.
Yes. Then actually, Bobby, take the break. Let's go out. Is it dark now or? Well,
Who all is staying for the workshop, by the way?
6 o'clock. We still.
I believe it's half of us.
Well, yeah. Whoever wants to stay for the workshop, we're gonna go ahead and look at a couple of the sites so that we then have charrette about which one we're gonna use.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, man. See you later. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.